it is important to be mindful of our emotions. Why? Because we want to spend valuable time with our family and friends. And that requires raising our consciousness so everyone can enjoy their time. Especially when in the last 2 years we spent a lot of time in isolations, for health reasons, of course, and had less opportunity to practice our social skills in social environments. A great book, Conscious Business by Fred Kaufman, who is a PhD in economics, a top teacher from MIT, and an executive coach and advisor in leadership and culture to big companies like Microsoft, Google, and Facebook. Fred's book, Conscious Business, explains the goals of creating organizational greatness. Now, organization is any social setting with people. How is this accomplished? Well, Fred Kaufman provides certain techniques such as real integrity, real communication that creates a conscious environment allowing you to find your passion and express your values in your everyday personal and professional lives, thereby creating a conscious environment of communication and organization. He explains that there's two forms of emotional incompetence, meaning where we're not paying attention to our ability to keep our cool. First is explosion, and second, suppression. Explosion is simply when you get triggered by information, which ultimately leads to an intense emotional response, like anger. Past 2 years, we've all been triggered in some way, shape, or form as we've been in isolation and have all been exposed to levels of misinformation, whether politics, sports, COVID, mainstream media, social media. We've all been exposed to levels of things that have multiple interpretations and therefore left up to our naked eye to decipher truth versus false. For example, when two different sources of information about the same topic are presented to people, let's say the New York Times versus the Wall Street Journal, when those two people meet, the past 2 years have proven that it will cause an explosion of minds. Why? Because they're under the impression that the information they received is true. And natural human instinct is to explode when someone tells us we're wrong. The second emotional incompetence is suppression. That's when you don't allow yourself to express yourself, and then you build up that suppressed emotion, which could lead to an explosion. It's a cycle. Either we explode or suppress our emotions until we explode at some point in the future. To share a quick personal story that happened this week, I personally am guilty of an unconscious emotional behavior, poor communication. I am leaving abroad this week and asked family to gather for a holiday. When I finally put my mind into the reality of the trip in the last 72 hours, I canceled the event for religious reasons. Doing that, I did not realize the amount of work and effort that went on to mentally prepare for the gathering by the people overseas. This negligence and incompetence on my part caused people overseas to have a big emotional response, of which I'm now responsible. Realistically, this could have been avoided with better forms of communication, and I want to send my sincere apologies overseas. To help master emotional intelligence, the book explains that there are 5 ways for emotional intelligence. The first, self-awareness. Self-awareness is the capacity to know what's happening within yourself. The capacity to know yourself and your impulses, what makes you tick and react to certain situations. Perhaps you don't need to snap at a colleague, or perhaps you don't need to send an angry, passive-aggressive message to a friend or family. Or perhaps there's a better way to communicate. Remember, it's not what you say, but how you say things. Another factor of managing your emotions is to accept them without judgment. Self-acceptance. Your emotion is an automatic impulse that is beyond your control. Thus, when you're mad or triggered or have an outburst, many times the aftermath holds us in that emotion. The book explains that it is easier to just accept it. Don't judge yourself and hold yourself back. Remember, it takes time to master your craft and get to certain levels of emotional intelligence. You also must create self-regulation, meaning it helps not to react impulsively. If you get angry about a topic, likely you hold on to the grudge for some time. This is natural. Try and remember that feeling once you break out of it, and then think back and remember the time you spent holding on to that emotion. That time has opportunity costs of furthering your goals in your personal life and your professional life. The next step of emotional intelligence is self-inquiry. Try and understand the root of the emotion. In order to do this, it's best to analyze your emotions. Fear, for example. The last 2 years, we went through a pandemic. We were all concerned with our personal health as well as family's health. We were all afraid to lose loved ones. The psychology of fear was real. It is real and always will be. Fear is a powerful emotion. However, now the data coming out from the health guidance is for most healthy people, individuals, the reality of the virus is not as severe as it first appeared when everything began. In fact, to understand the fear, I encourage you all to go on the CDC's website and search survival rates. They are exceptionally high for the majority of the population. So why hold on to that fear? And I understand if it impacted you severely, and I'm deeply sorry about that. If we can understand the reality of that fear, then perhaps we can begin to rebuild our societies and communities in a safe capacity for both the vulnerable and not. Lastly, it is very healthy to self-express your emotion. After you inquire about your reaction, then you can begin to ask the question, why am I angry? Why am I sad? Why am I afraid? How can I be happy? You can reconcile the emotion by trying to understand how you got to that emotional point. Try and build a story behind the emotion in order to express yourself. So to summarize Fred Kaufman's emotional mastery techniques, self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-regulate, self-inquiry, and self-express. What I've experienced is that most fights in relationships happen because either of poor communication or because people are not in control of their emotions. Now remember, we're all just human beings. However, emotional mastery is a great goal for everyone in our future. The example I gave in my personal life with holidays coming up is that the aftermath now is people's emotions are hurt. Like I said before, better communication on my end is the solution to future situations so everyone can be on the same page and we can realistically expect and set expectations for everyone so nobody gets offended. Now, this is a worldwide concept. Especially after the last 2 years, we have experienced high levels of emotions. We need to master our emotions and become emotionally intelligent. I encourage everyone to try and self-reflect over the past 2 years and see where you can enhance your emotions as we all return back into society with people. Realistically, we care for people and our loved ones. Remember that two minds don't think exactly alike. So unless there's authentic and delicate communications, it will be hard to balance two different realities. Remember, on your journey to get the most of your time, we want to master our emotions so we can build a successful future we want. Best of luck.